Hey everybody, so today we're going to talk about stress. You just finished up the chapter on motivation and you should have learned a lot through that chapter. Did you feel like you are better at extrinsic motivators or intrinsic motivators? And have you figured out what is your motivation? Why are you doing some of the things you're doing? Why are you taking this class? I mean, especially some of you are still in high school. Why are you taking college classes? What are the motivators behind that? So you can answer those questions better than I can, of course, but have you ever noticed that sometimes we can be really motivated, yet whatever our goal is, gets sidetracked or sidelined by different stressors in life? Maybe it's family issues, sometimes it's financial. Actually, today we're living in a very stressful culture and society between being quarantined for a while, all of the social unrest that is out there. There's a lot of stress going on in our lives. And what do we do with that stress? So we're going to talk about all of that today as we get to the chapter of stress, okay? So I hope that you get something out of this. This is part of why I actually love teaching this class, is because we can take actually some really important concepts and apply it to our everyday lives and put it into context, okay? So let's get going here. So the first question is, what is stress? Well, stress is the process by which we perceive and respond to certain events that we call stressors. It's how we appraise something. Do we see it as a threat or do we see it as a challenge? And that choice is going to become more and more important and clear as we make our way through this chapter. It is a process of perceiving and responding, and the response is actually called a stress reaction. Now, a lot of us respond in different ways. You've heard of that fight or flight response. Well, believe it or not, those are stress reactions or stress responses. It is trying to either preserve ourselves or preserve our life by running away or fighting. So one thing, stress can be either adaptive, stress can be adaptive or it can be maladaptive. So how is it adaptive? Well, in fearful, stress-causing situations, again, we can run away and we can save our lives. We can adapt to the situation very quickly because of the stress it causes. But it can be maladaptive. If its stress is prolonged, like chronic stress, it actually increases our risk of illness and health problems. Prolonged stress actually can cause death. Together with unhealthy behaviors, it can increase our risk for today's 4 leading diseases: heart disease, cancer, stroke, and chronic lung disease. Now you might be asking, Mrs. Courgette, how in the world does stress cause cancer? Well, stress reduces our immune system, and cancer, we all have, basically cancer is a cell that is mutated, and we all have mutated cells floating in our body. However, our immune system usually keeps those at bay and destroys them. However, if our immune system is compromised, well, those cells can start getting out of hand, and that turns into cancer. Chronic lung disease, you might go, okay, I understand heart disease and stroke. Stress raises our blood pressure, causes those issues. But if a person is a smoker, guess what happens when they're really stressed? They smoke more. And so chronic stress will cause somebody to be smoking a whole lot of cigarettes every day, which can lead to chronic lung disease. Interestingly, this is the leading cause of death in 1900. Tuberculosis, pneumonia, diarrhea, and equal with diarrhea was heart disease. But you'll see the percentages were much lower compared to 2000. Heart disease was at 30%. So this is how our culture has changed over the years. It's interesting to me that technology is supposed to make our life easier, but I think what we've done to ourselves is we've actually put more expectations upon ourselves, causing our stress levels to increase over time. We have what's called a stress response system. The hypothalamus and the pituitary gland also respond to stress by triggering outer adrenal glands to secrete, just know the word cortisol. Cortisol is your stress hormone, and it is part of the stress response system. There are a couple of different theoretical approaches, okay, to stress. The first is called the general adaptation syndrome. Psychologists who research recurring responses to stress called the general adaptation syndrome. They discovered various chemicals cause stress reaction in animals. The body's adaptive response to stress in 3 stages: alarm, resistance, and exhaustion. So let's start with the alarm reaction. Of course, when something comes at us, our body, our nervous system responds. It goes into alarm mode and it says danger, danger, danger. And then our body responds or reacts to that danger signal by increasing our heart rate, by increasing our blood pressure. Believe it or not, when you're stressed, your blood pressure goes up in order to save your life. It is meant to constrict your blood vessels to make it more difficult for you to bleed out. But once the threat is gone, what happens? Exhaustion. Body's resistance to stress is depleted, and we actually are physically deteriorating at that point. Think about a really stressful time in your life. Maybe it was finals, maybe it was a performance of some sort. What happens afterwards? You are exhausted. You're like, I'm just going to sleep for a week. Wake me up when it's over. But that's because your body, it did what it was supposed to do, but now it's needing to restore itself. Biogenic stressors are stimulants that cause stress by virtue of biochemical actions as they exert on the human body. So examples of biogenic stressors, believe it or not, coffee, nicotine, amphetamines, and I know this is going to be tragic to some of you, but chocolate. Again, some of it is the caffeine, but these are stimulants, and so they are acting on your body just as if you were stressed. Psychosocial stressors would include circumstances imposed on him or her, like meeting a deadline, being assigned to a new mission, anything that seems maybe it would be a final in class. Is going to be more based on circumstances that cause stressors. But each person handles stress in different ways depending on their perception. Let's say I said, hey, you have a test that I'm going to put online tomorrow. Some of you would totally freak out on me and be completely stressed out, while others of you may handle it fine and go, yeah, bring it on. I've been reading, I've been taking my notes, and I have a good handle on the information. So again, everybody handles stress in a different way. Okay, there are a couple of different types of personality, okay? Let's start with type A, and maybe some of you have heard of this. It's actually pretty interesting stuff. Type A person is basically used to describe a competitive, hard-driving person, but this person also shows impatience. They can be verbally aggressive, and they're prone to anger. Type B, I like to call them like the hippie personality type. They are easygoing and relaxed. Nothing seems to ruffle their feathers, and they are just chill all the time. Now, here's the thing to know. Type A people are definitely more likely to develop coronary heart disease as they get older. There is a third type that I don't know if this is in your book, but we're going to cover it here. Type H equals hardy. They see life stressors as a challenge versus a threat. And you're going to watch a video later on that is about this. Okay, so again, how do we appraise stress? There's a stressful event. Maybe you got a flat tire and you have a choice. You can appraise it as a threat. I'll never be able to fix this. Life is doomed. I'm going to be murdered out here by my car and everything is terrible, right? Or you can see it as a challenge. hey, I've got this. Maybe I'm not going to change the tire by myself, but I know who to call to help me, and this is a challenge that I can face. Well, based on how you appraise the situation, you respond. If you appraise it as a threat, well, then either you're going to you may panic and freeze up. If you see it as a challenge, you have arousal and focused attention, and you get the job done. There are types of internal conflicts, though. I'm just going to click all these. Okay, oops. We have approach, avoidance, and approach avoidance. Approach is just like that. The choice must be made between two attractive choices. Should we go to Harvard or should we go to Yale? Those are two both pretty awesome choices if you got into both. And it would be a hard decision. But how about avoidance? The choice must be made between two unattractive choices. Do you go through door A or do you go through door B? Door A, we don't know which one is which, but we know one of the doors leads to long lines, and door B leads to I don't know, maybe a bunch of little, how about a bunch of cats and you're allergic to cats, okay? Both of those would not be attractive choices, but you have to make a choice through either one. Okay, approach avoidance is a choice must be made about whether or not to pursue a single goal that has both attractive and unattractive aspects. And this is sometimes where you see people making lists, right? What are the pros and cons? Maybe it's, should I date this person? What are the pros? Oh, they're really nice. They're really fun. What is the con? You know what? They don't go to the same school as I do, or they don't have all the same interests that I do. So it's trying to decide what the best choice for you is. Okay, let's talk about stress and health. We're not going to go very deep into this, but stress that leads to elevated blood pressure results in coronary heart disease, clogging of the vessels that nourish the heart muscles. And here's just a great picture of plaque in the coronary artery and an artery that's actually closed. It's really tough for blood to get through those arteries that are closed. And I will tell you that affects a person's cognition later on. I had an aunt who was a wonderful lady, but she had coronary heart disease. And her carotid arteries that are in her neck were 90% blocked, which really caused her an issue, almost dementia-like behavior. But it really was resolved when they actually did kind of a procedure to clear out those arteries. Pessimism and heart disease. Research tells us that pessimistic adult men are twice as likely to develop heart disease over a 10-year period. You might be going, okay, pessimism, what does that word mean again? Those are the people who see things as being negative, glass half empty, versus an optimist sees it as a glass half full, that there's always a rainbow on the other side. So how do we cope with stress? We have some strategies for alleviating stress. Reducing stress by changing events that can cause stress or by changing how we react to stress is called problem-focused coping. So basically, you're going to, if something is very stressful for you, maybe it's your job. Let's say you have a job, and it just stresses you out to go to this job. I knew a young man who had a job that his boss was constantly yelling at him. And to the point where before he'd go to work, he would have a panic attack because it was so stressful to him. Well, in order to reduce the stress, his parents said he could quit his job because it really just wasn't worth it of the stress he was going through. Because you know what? No boss should be yelling at their employee like that. When we cannot change a stressful situation, though, and respond by attending to our emotional needs, it's called emotional focused coping. So as you know, we can't solve every problem that comes along, and sometimes we just have to learn how to deal with it. Let's say you have a family member who's suffering from a bad illness. Maybe it's cancer, maybe it's COVID, I don't know. But we can't change those circumstances, but we can learn how to deal with them. And that would be emotional focused coping. How do we manage stress? Well, it's by having a sense of control, an optimistic explanatory style, so being able to see things like having hope that it's going to get better, and social support can reduce stress and improve your health. So let's talk about having a sense of control over our own lives. A sense of control or influence one has over stressful events in one's life is really important. We like to feel like we have a choice at least, and we don't always have that choice, but we like to believe that we do. Most studies suggest that the lower the perceived control, the larger the potential for health-related problems. Whereas the lower perceived control leads to lower immunity to diseases. We like to feel, again, that we have some sense of say over what's happening to us or what our choices are. And again, we don't always have a control over the big picture. Let's take, for example, COVID-19 and the quarantine. Okay, did we have control over that? Not really. But we had some choices to make while in that situation. We chose how isolated we were going to be. We chose, are we going to participate in Zoom meetings? Are we going to reach out to other people at least via the internet or social media? Or are we going to stay really isolated in our homes? Are we going to try to look at this in a positive light? Or are we going to look at it as it's all bad and all terrible? I knew a lot of seniors in high school that for them, it seemed like the end of the world because their senior year did not end the way they thought it should end. However, I worked with a couple of them in just trying to turn that attitude around and show them that they had some control still over maybe not what was going on right here, right now, but what could happen in the future. Okay, so you missed out on Disneyland, but maybe we could go to Disneyland later on and trying to help them see that they still have some control. It's just not happening in the timing that they were wishing to have. So this brings us up to basically our explanatory style. We talked about how people with optimism tend to have more control over their stressors. They cope better with stressful life events and have better moods and then have a better immune system. So that's huge. If we can keep it positive, it will totally help you move forward in a positive way and hopefully keep those health issues under control. The other thing that we find really important is social support. If you have a supportive family or a marriage partner or close friends, they can help you cope with stress. Those people their immune functionings calm the cardiovascular system and end up lowering their blood pressure. So think again, what happens when you're with your friends? Do you laugh a lot? Do you have a good time? Do you feel connected and that gives you a sense of peace? I know I do. I have a group of friends that whenever I'm with them, they've been my friends from high school actually, and I still have so much fun with them that after I've left their company, I'm like, that was the greatest time ever. And I know just physically I am feeling better. Something else, and I know people say this and you go, yeah, I've heard that before. But believe it or not, exercise. Exercise, yes, it's getting your cardiovascular system going, but it is also giving you endorphins. Endorphins are that natural happy juice. And when you have those endorphins, man, that really lifts your mood and it ends up helping you cope with stressful events better. So that was the one thing during quarantine that I ended up doing a lot of is going on walks. We'd go on walks or on bike rides, not just to get out of the house, but in order I knew I needed to lift my endorphins a little bit. My house felt a little small after a while, and so this was a nice option for us to do. So the question is, can aerobic exercise boost the spirit? And many studies suggest that aerobic exercise can elevate mood and well-being because aerobic exercise raises energy, increases self-confidence, lowers tension, depression, and anxiety. So again, during this time, I would just recommend getting out and doing something. I know that a lot of gyms have been closed, things like that. But if you can just get out and walk, it would be awesome. And if you can go walk with a friend or a family member, again, then you have that social support built right in. There's something called biofeedback, which is basically they use an electronic device to inform people about what their physiological responses are and give them a chance to bring that response into a healthier range. So how it works is basically if your heart rate is raised, by watching all the machine, how it all works, you can focus on relaxing and trying to bring that heart rate down, trying to bring down your electrical impulses and just be relaxing. Relaxation and meditation, though, have similar effects in reducing tension and anxiety. If we were in a class, I would actually at this point probably go over a relaxation exercise with you. I will spare you that on this lecture, but I do recommend just relaxation exercises can be so helpful. It's a lot about learning how to breathe. And when we breathe, our muscles relax automatically because it's bringing oxygen to those muscles. And I know you may go, well, we're always breathing, but when we are stressed, we tend to breathe more shallow, therefore not getting the oxygen levels that we need. You can also change your lifestyle. You will see a lot of type A people. They a lot of times end up being CEOs of companies and things like that. Until, and I put an exclamation point on that, until they end up having a heart attack. A lot of times when they have a health issue of some sort it's usually pretty life-threatening, you will see them completely change their lifestyle. Now again, if they were a good CEO and made a lot of money and saved that money, you'll see them often go and, retire somewhere where they can play golf and relax more. For the rest of us, it is learning to just change our lifestyle. Maybe it's learning to eat healthier, get regular exercise, and learning to not see all the things in life as a threat, but instead taking it on as a challenge. Something else that can help reduce stress is spirituality and faith communities. Research tells us that regular religious attendance has been a reliable predictor of a longer lifespan with a reduced risk of dying. What is interesting, I found, and there's a little graph here, that if you think about it though, religious communities usually, there's less smoking with them, there's a little bit more regular exercise and weekly religious attendance, which means there is more social, there's a social aspect to that. So just kind of an interesting piece of information. Intervening factors. Investigators suggest that 3 factors that intervene between religious involvement and better health. Again, healthier behaviors, social support, and that positive emotion. There's usually with religion, there's a lot of, there's hope involved for the future. Okay, I'm going to have you watch this great video of managing stress, and she's specifically going to talk about how you see stressors. Do you see them as threats, or can you view them as challenges? So enjoy.
I have a confession to make. But first, I want you to make a little confession to me. In the past year, I want you to just raise your hand if you've experienced relatively little stress. Anyone? How about a moderate amount of stress? Who's experienced a lot of stress? Yeah, me too. But that is not my confession. My confession is this: I'm a health psychologist, and my mission is to help people be happier and healthier. But I fear that something I've been teaching for the last 10 years is doing more harm than good, and it has to do with stress. For years, I've been telling people stress makes you sick. It increases the risk of everything from the common cold to cardiovascular disease. Basically, I've turned stress into the enemy. But I've changed my mind about stress, and today, I want to change yours. Let me start with the study that made me rethink my whole approach to stress. This study tracked 30,000 adults in the United States for 8 years, and they started by asking people, how much stress have you experienced in the last year? They also asked, do you believe that stress is harmful for your health? And then they used public death records to find out who died. Okay. Some bad news first. People who experienced a lot of stress in the previous year had a 43% increased risk of dying. But that was only true for the people who also believed that stress is harmful for your health. People who experienced a lot of stress but did not view stress as harmful were no more likely to die. In fact, they had the lowest risk of dying of anyone in the study, including people who had relatively little stress. Now, the researchers estimated that over the 8 years they were tracking deaths, 182,000 Americans died prematurely, not from stress, but from the belief that stress is bad for you. That is over 20,000 deaths a year. Now, if that estimate is correct, that would make believing stress is bad for you the 15th largest cause of death in the United States last year, killing more people than skin cancer, HIV, AIDS, and homicide. You can see why this study freaked me out. Here I've been spending so much energy telling people stress is bad for your health. So this study got me wondering, can changing how you think about stress make you healthier? And here the science says yes. When you change your mind about stress, you can change your body's response to stress. Now, to explain how this works, I want you all to pretend that you are participants in a study designed to stress you out. It's called the social stress test. You come into the laboratory and you're told you have to give a 5-minute impromptu speech on your personal weaknesses to a panel of expert evaluators sitting right in front of you. And to make sure you feel the pressure, there are bright lights and a camera in your face, kind of like this. And the evaluators have been trained to give you discouraging nonverbal feedback, like this. Now that you're sufficiently demoralized, time for part 2, a math test. And unbeknownst to you, the experimenter has been trained to harass you during it. Now, we're gonna all do this together. It's gonna be fun, for me. Okay. I want you all to count backwards from 996 in increments of 7. You're gonna do this out loud as fast as you can, starting with 996. Go. Go faster. Faster, please. You're going too slow. Stop, 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 stop. That guy made a mistake. We're gonna have to start all over again. You're not very good at this, are you? Okay, so you get the idea. Now, if you were actually in this study, you'd probably be a little stressed out. Your heart might be pounding, you might be breathing faster, maybe breaking out into a sweat. And normally we interpret these physical changes as anxiety or signs that we aren't coping very well with the pressure. But what if you viewed them instead as signs that your body was energized, was preparing you to meet this challenge? Now, that is exactly what participants were told in a study conducted at Harvard University. Before they went through the social stress test, they were taught to rethink their stress response as helpful. That pounding heart is preparing you for action. If you're breathing faster, it's no problem. It's getting more oxygen to your brain. And participants who learned to view the stress response as helpful for their performance, well, they were less stressed out, less anxious, more confident. But the most fascinating finding to me was how their physical stress response changed. Now, in a typical stress response, your heart rate goes up and your blood vessels constrict like this. And this is one of the reasons that chronic stress is sometimes associated with cardiovascular disease. It's not really healthy to be in this state all the time. But in the study, when participants viewed their stress response as helpful, their blood vessels stayed relaxed like this. Their heart was still pounding, but this is a much healthier cardiovascular profile. It actually looks a lot like what happens in moments of joy and courage. Over a lifetime of stressful experiences, this one biological change could be the difference between a stress-induced heart attack at age 50 and living well into your 90s. And this is really what the new science of stress reveals, that how you think about stress matters. So my goal as a health psychologist has changed. I no longer want to get rid of your stress. I want to make you better at stress. And we just did a little intervention. If you raised your hand and said you'd had a lot of stress in the last year, we could have saved your life. Because hopefully the next time your heart is pounding from stress, you're going to remember this talk and you're going to think to yourself, this is my body helping me rise to this challenge. And when you view stress in that way, your body believes you and your stress response becomes healthier. Now, I said I have over a decade of demonizing stress to redeem myself from. So we are going to do one more intervention. I want to tell you about one of the most underappreciated aspects of the stress response. And the idea is this: stress makes you social. To understand this side of stress, we need to talk about a hormone, oxytocin. And I know oxytocin has already gotten as much hype as a hormone can get. It even has its own cute nickname, the cuddle hormone, because it's released when you hug someone. But this is a very small part of what oxytocin is involved in. Oxytocin is a neurohormone. It fine-tunes your brain's social instincts. It primes you to do things that strengthen close relationships. Oxytocin makes you crave physical contact with your friends and family. It enhances your empathy. It even makes you more willing to help and support the people you care about. Some people have even suggested we should snort oxytocin to become more compassionate and caring. But here's what most people don't understand about oxytocin. It's a stress hormone. Your pituitary gland pumps this stuff out as part of the stress response. It's as much a part of your stress response as the adrenaline that makes your heart pound. And when oxytocin is released in the stress response, it is motivating you to seek support. Your biological stress response is nudging you to tell someone how you feel instead of bottling it up. Your stress response wants to make sure you notice when someone else in your life is struggling so that you can support each other. When life is difficult, your stress response wants you to be surrounded by people who care about you. Okay, so how is knowing this side of stress going to make you healthier? Well, oxytocin doesn't only act on your brain, it also acts on your body. And one of its main roles in your body is to protect your cardiovascular system from the effects of stress. It's a natural anti-inflammatory. It also helps your blood vessels stay relaxed during stress. But my favorite effect on the body is actually on the heart. Your heart has receptors for this hormone. And oxytocin helps heart cells regenerate and heal from any stress-induced damage. This stress hormone strengthens your heart. And the cool thing is that all of these physical benefits of oxytocin are enhanced by social contact and social support. So when you reach out to others under stress, either to seek support or to help someone else, you release more of this hormone, your stress response becomes healthier, and you actually recover faster from stress. I find this amazing that your stress response has a built-in mechanism for stress resilience. And that mechanism is human connection. I want to finish by telling you about one more study. And listen up, because this study could also save a life. This study tracked about 1,000 adults in the United States, and they ranged in age from 34 to 93. And they started the study by asking, how much stress have you experienced in the last year? They also asked, how much time have you spent helping out friends, neighbors, people in your community? And then they used public records for the next 5 years to find out who died. Okay, so the bad news first. For every major stressful life experience, like financial difficulties or family crisis, that increased the risk of dying by 30%. But, and I hope you are expecting a but by now, but that wasn't true for everyone. People who spent time caring for others showed absolutely no stress-related increase in dying, 0. Caring created resilience. And so we see once again that the harmful effects of stress on your health are not inevitable. How you think and how you act can transform your experience of stress. When you choose to view your stress response as helpful, you create the biology of courage. And when you choose to connect with others under stress, you can create resilience. Now, I wouldn't necessarily ask for more stressful experiences in my life, but this science has given me a whole new appreciation for stress. Stress gives us access to our hearts. The compassionate heart that finds joy and meaning in connecting with others. And yes, your pounding physical heart working so hard to give you strength and energy. And when you choose to view stress in this way, you're not just getting better at stress, you're actually making a pretty profound statement. You're saying that you can trust yourself to handle life's challenges. And you're remembering that you don't have to face them alone. Thank you. Thank you.